It's time for All Hands on Tech.
Climb on board as we explore all the amazing things happening in Nova Scotia's tech sector. Each episode, we'll chat with local experts to uncover the secrets of what makes Nova Scotia the best place for collaboration, innovation, and creativity.
All Hands on Tech is proudly produced by Digital Nova Scotia, the industry association for Nova Scotia's growing tech sector.
Our guest today is building the future of television, entertainment, and learning, all from their headquarters in Bedford, Nova Scotia.
REDspace is a custom software development company that builds unique, flexible platforms for global enterprises. They combine well-built, scalable backends with engaging front-end user experiences, and they've been doing so for nearly 20 years.
We're super excited to dive into the seemingly ever-evolving world of streaming. And joining us for today's conversation is Luke DeWitt, REDspace's Director of Web Services. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited for this conversation. Before we get too much into it, we gave a little brief overview at the beginning about what REDspace does, but maybe dive a little bit deeper into what you guys do for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, we do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that I always tell people. Like we kind of touch everything, and there's always this thought like you can't do everything well, but like I think we do. I would say our clients think the same thing. So one of our big focuses though is video, right? Getting this content to the people. We work with some pretty major clients, big names that I won't get into right now, but a lot of names that you've heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, we get a lot of eyeballs on our work. There's a lot of people that are constantly consuming the content. And like I say, video is a major focus of ours, but we also, we'll do a lot in terms of maybe building back-end systems, building front-end kind of more boutique-y websites for different award shows or different things like that. A lot of kind of framework development so that they can roll things out quicker. We do apps.
Mm-hmm.
We do stuff outside of that realm as well. I shouldn't just limit it. I like talking about the media stuff because it's the most fun. That's where a lot of the eyeballs are. But we do a lot of stuff in the learning space. We do some stuff in defense and in energy, oil and gas and stuff like that. We've kind of been able to grow, take a lot of the same concepts and deploy them into a bunch of different realms, which has been a lot of fun.
And that's what I think is interesting too when you go to your website. When you think streaming platforms, you think entertainment, media, like you said. But yeah, it says right there, you're in defense, you're in education. And it's interesting because that's just kind of where the future is. Like these streaming platforms can be applied to so many different industries.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 80% of the internet's bandwidth is streaming.
Wow.
So like streaming media.
Wow. Yeah.
I shouldn't say just video, but media. So, it's a lot of the internet and a lot of people are moving into that space, right? It's a lot easier for their consumers to consume. And because of that, there's a lot of interest in it. So we're helping to get that stuff out there.
So exciting.
Well, before we dive further into that, we're going to go back to our little rapid fire questions and just so we get to know you a little bit better.
Perfect.
So number one, do you prefer to take notes on paper or on a laptop?
It would depend on the meeting, right? A lot of the times it's whatever's closest. Sometimes I'm accused of being a loud typer. So like depending on the situation, if I can't be muted, then I'll do it on paper. But I always end up transposing them over to the laptop anyway. So yeah, it's kind of it depends on the situation.
Very fair. Yeah, I get that.
Okay. Do you prefer an email or a phone call?
I'll go with a phone call.
Okay.
I have God, I don't even want to tell you how many unread emails I have right now. Because it just gets bombarded with stuff though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I get less spam calls than spam emails. So I'll say
that is fair. If
I'll
someone
phone
calls
call.
you, it's probably on purpose at this
exactly.
point.
Yeah.
All right. And last but not least, what is your favorite part about working at REDspace?
The people. That's cliche, isn't it?
No, but it's fair.
It is the people. I went to REDspace basically because I knew I would have the opportunity to work with some pretty cool clients. Putting stuff on the internet has always been like, when I was learning all of this stuff, when I was in grade 6, right? That was something that always appealed to me. And so putting things out there that I can show off has always been really exciting for me. Going home, I'm from Fredericton originally. So going home at Christmas, I remember I would go home and we'd all be talking and catching up about stuff. And it's, one of my friends was living in Calgary at the time and they'd say, "What do you do?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm building this software that helps us run this X-ray for airplanes." And people would look at him like he had two heads. And then it's like, "Well, what do you do, Luke?" And then it's like, "Well, here, I'll show you." And I'd load up a site and, SpongeBob would be dancing around. And I could say, I did that. So that's always been something that's really appealing to me. But since working there, like I've been there for almost 16 years now. And yeah, just the people, there's so many smart people that work there. And there's the old line about never wanting to be the smartest person in the room. And for a long time, I've been very lucky to be surrounded by a lot of folks who are super smart. And the people are they're fantastic. And normally what I'm asked in interviews is a question similar to that. And then subsequently I'm asked, what's the worst part of the job? And it's when those people leave because they are really smart. And we tend to get targeted a lot for our people. So
That is
seeing a lot of really good folks who I've considered friends leave, but also seeing a lot of them come back. It's been that's always, both tough and fun when they do come back, but the people are just great, right? We have a ton of fun working. We have a ton of fun with kind of some of the auxiliary culture-y stuff around the office. So that's my answer, even though it is a cliche.
Yeah. And this isn't so much, you did touch on culture there. And I think that's something so evident at REDspace from an outsider's perspective is it seems like there's such a good company culture. I went there, however many months ago it was now. I loved it. I couldn't stop talking to my friends and family about how amazing it seemed there,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's not by accident. We work hard on it, right? Like, and I mean, again, it's a credit to the people, right? A lot of folks there they step up and you don't want to go to work and have it feel like a job, which is, there's obviously work to be done, but yeah, we do a really good job at that. I've always felt like we've been really strong in that area. And like I say, we've had people leave and then come back and that's one of the things they cite, right?
I mean, that's super telling. Someone leaves and comes back.
Exactly. Yeah. So
that in itself. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been out in the world and they know this is where they're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've already kind of mentioned this. Your team does a lot at REDspace, but as you even said, I think it's fair to say you're maybe best known for streaming media, entertainment, that kind of thing. So it's something we use every day, but most of us don't really understand how it works. I think Jenna and I both can say that. So, how does your team in Nova Scotia here help get, something like a Hollywood blockbuster onto our television screens?
Yeah, so I'll preface this answer with I'm going to grossly oversimplify things.
Okay, that's fair.
Streaming media is not that easy. I'm going to try and make it seem really easy today though. So obviously, first thing that happens, the video gets recorded, right? So let's just say the director, the producer, I don't know who actually uploads the file, but they have a video file that they upload to the cloud, right? Normally it's the cloud, sometimes it's on-prem, but the first stage is then that video is encoded at different renditions. So, different resolutions, right? 480p, 1080p, 4K, 8K. And then those resolutions could all have different bit rates, right? Just different amounts of data that are in there to affect the picture quality. And that's because we have so many different devices right now, right? Like different devices have different capabilities. So once those videos have been encoded, they are put into storage, right? And normally it's if you were talking about something like AWS, you would have a CDN in front of it, like CloudFront. But that, the way that video is stored is the same way that, a lot of images or different things would be stored online, right? What happens next is there's a packaging step. And the packaging step is basically converting the files that exist around these renditions, resolutions, all this stuff into a format that can be played back to the user. There's something called a manifest file that's generated, and that includes all of the information that the video needs to be played, including the audio, maybe a thumbnail image, maybe a poster image. There's all sorts of stuff in there that is used. And then that brings us to what most of us are familiar with, which is the playback. So the player will take the manifest file. It knows how to read the metadata inside of it to play it back. So a lot of our work at REDspace actually started in that space specifically. We built a video player that then became the video player for one of our biggest clients. And there's been a lot of that sort of stuff that goes on. That player gets about 10 million streams a day, or over 10 million streams a day.
That's wild.
And so, yeah, we started doing that in the, and I mean, going back to where I was with it though, it's a video player. It reads a file and it plays it back to you, right? We started building these things in Flash way back in the day. Flash died, and now we're mostly in that JavaScript realm, but we also work on players on your iPhone or tvOS, Android, Fire TV. We do stuff with Roku as well, which has its own kind of BrightScript language around it. And more recently, we've been doing a lot of like the smart TVs and OTT devices and whatnot, because there's more and more stuff in there. But at its core, it's reading a file and it's playing it back. But there's all sorts of work that happens behind the scenes before we do that.
Shortly. That's really interesting. I never, as someone who knows nothing about any of this, I would never have assumed that different streaming services, from my perspective, have different players.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of research into the different players. Like, YouTube's player is very different from the Netflix player, is very different from the players that we build. They have a lot of the same
fundamentals.
Yeah, and underneath everything there is a set of protocols that they're following, but in terms of tracking and in terms of all, user experience and all sorts of different things, there's so much that goes into that. And like I say, that's where we started a lot of our work at REDspace, but then we've kind of been moving it. I mean, we still do a lot on the player side, but there's still all of the stuff that I was mentioning in terms of the encoding and the packaging and all that. There's a ton of work.
Is there like a reigning champ of what type of player, or is it kind of just like you own one and you own the rights to it and someone else has got to have another one?
It would depend on how obviously each of our clients has their very own set of, they have their own requirements and their own things that they need to worry about. I can say pretty certainly, I guess, that, our player and the Netflix player and the YouTube player are all very different. And when I say our player, I should be saying like each of our clients' players, because they are all very different. And some of our clients they might have 2 or 3 different players depending on, who the audience is.
Right.
A lot of them have moved into having a single player, so it just makes everything easier on the back end in terms of how that content can be encoded and whatnot. But they're all very customizable in that, a player for a kid's show will look very different from a player for like something that plays drama or sports or something like that.
Right.
There's obviously you have competitors out there, but if there's someone who wants to stream content, like why are they coming to REDspace?
I think it's well, there's 2 reasons. One, like I mentioned, we have a ton of experience.
Totally.
And most of our, we don't really have a sales team. We don't go out and sell this.
Yeah.
All of our clients have basically been via word of mouth. So, the entertainment industry as it is and the locations that they're at, most of our clients are in the States, right? People move around a lot. And so what's happened is it's been a lot of organic growth, right? Word of mouth. Person A leaves company X to go to company Y, and then they get there and they're like, we can't get any of this working. And then they say, well, we know this group up in Nova Scotia and they did a great job for us. Let's get in touch with them. And then, and that's how a lot of our clients have come to us or found us, right? We're not out there actively selling. And then just a lot of the folks really love tech and love what they do. And so they're really involved in different communities on Twitter. There are different Slack groups, there are different Discord groups where people are just in there talking. And then these conversations lead to like little DMs where it's like, hey, you really seem to know what's going on. Like, can we maybe talk a little more about this or about that? And it's fantastic because, right, the people that come to us they're all names that pretty much everyone knows, right? Like there's not a lot of like little mom and pop shops coming to stream, videos at a super high scale to, millions of users. It's a pretty limited group that does that.
Yeah.
And so we've made a pretty good footprint in that realm for ourselves.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
amazing.
For someone with if you don't need the sales team, that definitely speaks for itself. That's quite impressive.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of touched on it about kind of that customizability aspect, but what have been some of the biggest changes that you've noticed in terms of customer expectations? For example, streaming platforms now offer suggestions, which they never used to do. And how quickly is the team at REDspace pivoting to keep up with those consumer habits?
Yeah. So I'd probably answer that question with a question, and that I'd ask, how many devices do you have in your home that can stream media right now?
Oh, a lot.
I mean, I
I'm trying to
have
think.
2, 3. I also have a roommate, so we've got about like 6 total going.
Yeah, like same phone, laptop, iPad. So there's plenty.
So yeah, like I have 7 or 8 devices in my house,
Yeah.
right? My wife and I have phones. We have an iPad that the kids or us use, laptop, computer. We have a Roku TV. I have a couple Chromecasts. So I have a Google Home Hub. So on average now, homes will have like 3 different devices for streaming content. Just on average, it can obviously go higher or lower than that. But all of these devices, they have they're different screen sizes, different compute power. You know, I have kids. I'm not giving the kids my iPhone or anything to go watch a video with. So there's a lot of hand-me-down devices that we see in that. So this is one of the reasons that we have these different renditions, right? You don't need to over-deliver content to a device that can't take advantage of it.
Right.
So, you talk about challenges and I hate to bring it up, but the pandemic, we saw a big shift in how content was being consumed, right? Parents were at home. They were working. The kids were at home, not working, not going to school. They were being entertained by, videos. And so we saw a huge shift in the analytics where a lot of the children's content was no longer being watched on these secondhand devices, these old iPads or iPhones, or maybe even like on a Switch or something. You started seeing a lot more of that content being consumed on, the main family room
Right.
TV, right? 55, 65-inch TVs. And up until then, that for children's content anyway, that screen size, those resolutions and whatnot, they were kind of an afterthought because there just wasn't much traffic. So, now we have this whole new set of devices that we have to target. And like, I'm only talking about, or what I've talked about so far is a lot of streaming, but like, you have to think it's not just streaming, right? There's the apps that allow you to stream the content. And so what we were seeing was a lot of frustrated people leaving the apps because these kids apps, they weren't optimized for these
Right.
different TVs and whatnot. So what was happening is the kids were getting upset because they couldn't get to their content. The parents would come in, they couldn't get to it. They would have to get back to work, and then they'd just go somewhere that they were more familiar with that would work. So, yeah, it's not just limited. The challenges aren't just limited to the video playback, but everything around that, right? And I mentioned some of these TVs that we've been targeting recently. These TVs, they look great. They have great picture, but they are not computers, right? Like they can't, the experience on those smart TVs and whatnot, it's really tough to have like a high fidelity experience. So that's one of the big challenges that we've been dealing with, right? And lucky for us, we have a design team that knows how to design for these different types of apps, right? These different sizes, things that they have to consider when streaming on a phone versus on a TV. We have a QE team that can write automated tests and know how to test on these devices properly. So that helps us, nip a lot of those potential challenges in the bud. But yeah, like there's a whole ecosystem around all of this, and there's always going to be challenges with any of those things, right? We have, there's analytics, there's quality of service metrics that we want to meet, bug reports, and figuring out how are people actually using these, right? So yeah, we touch a lot of these things and so much more. Like the ecosystem around all of it is huge. And like I say, I mean, it's not just the media clients that provide these challenges, right? Like e-learning, defense, like not all these companies have top of the line MacBook Pros that they're using to do this, or, iPhone 13 or whatever, right? So there's a lot of older devices. And so there's a lot of challenges that come with that and making sure that you're doing things the right way.
I was, and maybe you can't speak so much to this, but when I think about like streaming now too, I think, and this was maybe even a couple of years ago, but say there's a hit show that goes to a streaming platform and instead of now watching it like over a series of months, people are watching like millions of people are watching it in a weekend. Like, is that challenging? I don't know if that's something that your team would necessarily be like having to deal with, but
I don't touch that as much as some of the other folks on our team. But yeah, like, I mean, like I say, it's 80+% of the internet's bandwidth is streaming media. So there are ways that we can mitigate that, right?
Yeah.
Like multi-cloud is a big thing, right? Where you can't rely on a single cloud provider to handle everything for you, right? A lot of our clients will generally spread that risk out. So if one of them goes down, you know, they don't want their clients or their consumers, to miss out on any of that. So
of course.
But I mean, it's all bandwidth, right? If they're not watching a single series, they're watching a bunch of different shows.
And that's me knowing nothing about it. But I'm just thinking like, oh no, this new show is coming out. I'm panicking, thinking.
Yeah, I guess I kind of always think like when a website crashes, you know, like too much traffic to the website and then it comes down, like something like that.
It's just wild how people are consuming media these days, though.
Yeah,
it's so different than it was even 5 years ago.
And a lot of that is being, you know, it's come down to a science, right? Like the challenge listen, what you're saying makes a ton of sense. That's a challenge that was probably identified, I don't know, you know, years ago. And how can we make sure our stuff doesn't go down? And this isn't a concern for just, you know, client A. Everyone's worried about that. So there's a lot of shared knowledge and stuff that goes into that so that everyone can at least get on the same page to start, and then they'll figure out how to make it better than the next guy so that they can hopefully bring in more people.
Television has obviously changed so much, and it's clear that streaming is the future, or it's now and it is the future. So how do you foresee it continuing to change, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you see coming down the road? Yeah,
so there's a ton of innovation. Like every day there's a new thing that comes up with streaming. So you know, the two biggest things are, I mean, the two biggest things are always going to be the two biggest things because they revolve around money, right? It's you know, how can we deliver the highest quality content for the lowest cost to us as a business? And then two is ads, which they go hand in hand, right? One keeps your costs down and one brings revenue in. So it probably makes sense to start with ads because, you know, nobody likes them. And then this way we can kind of quickly get past it. Nobody likes ads, but honestly, that's what pays for most of the innovation in this space. Without the ads, there's no revenue obviously to go around. I always kind of laugh because people were paying, you know, $100 to $200 a year for cable. Like I don't have cable at home anymore, but it's just, you know, it's literally littered with ads. You can't go more
mostly
than
ads.
you can't go more than 7 minutes without, you know, 2.5 minutes of ads. And now you're starting to, you know, you see way more ads in front of the content that you want to consume. And then now what you're seeing even is a lot more ads that are being, especially on like YouTube, right? You're seeing ads built right into the stream of what you're watching because people are finding ways to block it and whatnot. But like, you know, people want to get paid, right? And these creators, they want to innovate too, but if they're not getting any ad revenue, then it makes it harder for them to do it. So, you know, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to sound like a shill, but they are important here. Like I mentioned that we have one client that's getting over 10 million streams a day. The ad numbers in there, and I mean, listen, we could have a whole nother podcast just on the ad ecosystem. But the sheer volume of ad, you know, kind of bids and whatnot that are going out during this, it's staggering. And we have all sorts of stuff supporting that and making sure that, you know, that one of the big challenges for clients though is making sure that, you know, those ads are going out. And when we're getting a note that, hey, this ad is going out, it's actually being played. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff in that space that we don't need to get into today because it's not as much fun as some of the other things that we can talk about. But like I say, like this whole idea, and for years, this has been a challenge, right? How do we get this high quality content out for the lowest price possible, or the lowest cost possible, I should say? You know, as much as they do put, our clients do put ads into their content, they're so much more concerned about bringing the user a positive experience. When you see some of the stream numbers go up where there's, you know, however many millions of concurrent streams, but 1,000 users aren't able to access it, you know, there are hours of calls looking into why were these 1,000 people not able to access the content, right? They really do care about that. Yeah, the other side of this is obviously being able to deliver the content at the lowest cost possible to them. So nobody wants a bad experience. Our clients, they want that content to get to the users. They want it to look good. They want it to perform good. They don't want it buffering for you as much as you don't want it buffering, right? There are so many metrics tracking how your experience is as a user, measuring if there's buffering, measuring, quality drops and whatnot. Like I say, if there's a stream happening, a live stream that has, X number of millions of users, but we get these notifications that 1,000 users are having a poor experience, there will be so many calls about why are they having a negative experience? How do we fix that? How do we make sure that doesn't happen again? I've been in some of those calls. They're not fun because honestly, they know that if they're not providing you with a good experience, you're not going to be paying and you're not going to be spending your time on their service. So, there's a ton of innovation happening in that space, which is a lot of fun. And then you have the flip side of it, where there are some companies right now where they're, one of my coworkers was telling me he bought a new Sony Bravia TV, and there's a Bravia streaming service. And he said that they must not care at all about the cost, because he watched a movie at 4K, and he said it was delivering like 80 megs a second of video quality. And then he went over to Amazon Prime to watch the same video, and they were delivering, I think it was 30 megs a second, he said. And it's still in 4K, right? The resolution is still 4K, but just like he said, like the difference was insane to him, right? He had never seen something look that good. But I figure Sony, they've already got your money on the TV, right? They can afford to spend a little more to deliver you, a higher quality of content. So, this works great when you're in right in the HRM or something and you have really good internet. But if I've taken some vacations up in Antigonish the last few years with my family, and there's always Wi-Fi at the spot where we're at, and it's never as fast as it is here. I don't want to bad mouth it or anything, but it's just
fair.
the bandwidth there is just not as good as what it is here. So if I'm trying to deliver you that same quality with an internet connection that isn't good enough to support it, like, I'm just going to get upset and turn it off, right? Yep. So this is again why we have these different renditions, right? Because I can send you something that you can play that will look okay, like it'll look pretty good without it buffering for you. So your experience is still really good, and the quality is still really good. It's not the top quality, but it's better than good enough. You know what I mean?
And at least you're able to get through streaming the thing that you're watching.
Exactly. So right now, one of the things that's happening in this space, right, is in the past, what we'd do is we would set up different profiles, and we would say, okay, at 4K, we want it to encode at this bit rate. This is the audio we want to use. And then at 1080p, maybe we want to do this at this bit rate. And we would have these profiles. So when that video would get uploaded, regardless of the video, you would say, this is the quality we want to stream the content at. So now one of these big topics is this idea of per title encoding. So there's a video developer survey that goes out every year, and 1/3 of the respondents of this survey in the past year said that they've already implemented this. And in this next year, in 2023, 1/3 say that they're going to implement this.
Okay.
And so what that is it's this idea that we're going to encode videos, and instead of having a profile for, just for a network, we're going to make sure that each title is being as encoded as pristinely as possible, right? If you think about it, you can encode a cartoon at a certain bit rate that's much lower than what you would encode, a big network drama that has, sweeping mountain shots and whatnot. There's so much more quality in that than there is in the cartoons. So that allows the clients to save on storage costs, save on bandwidth sent costs. It makes it easier for you to be able to consume that content without any service interruptions. And there will be all sorts of there will be all sorts of checks, right? Like there will be people, there's actually a metric out there, I think it's called VMAF, that will measure the quality of a stream versus the original. And clients will play with a bunch of different settings to say, okay, we're still getting like 85% quality. And if I was to show you some of these examples, you would see that even at like 45% quality, you don't really notice a difference. But once it starts dipping below that, that's when you start noticing some of the fragmentation, depending on the content, of course. So, but there's a lot of work going into this idea of like per title encoding, which is solving a lot of really interesting problems for us. Last year, there was a big push. The number one topic in this survey the year before was around low latency video delivery. So basically getting live content to users as quick as possible. We've done some of this. We were actually doing some of this like 5 or 6 years ago, really investigating new ways that we could get video in a live stream format to a user in under, I think we were under like a second and a half, definitely under 2 seconds anyway. That was the number one response for the 2022 survey. The number one response now for 2023 is how do we do this at scale, right? We can get this now, but how do we get it to millions, tens of millions of people? How do we stream the Super Bowl at 4K, to most of the world?
Right.
There's a whole bunch of research going into this, and it appears that they know what the solution is going to be, but it's really cool to think about. This whole idea of low latency is, the whole reason that I kept cable for as long as I did was sports, right? Streaming sports. If we can solve that at scale, you're going to see a lot more people cutting the cord because there's other reasons for that, right? Betting right now, right? In the States, especially.
Yeah, that's true.
There's so much money to be made there. So we're going to see what happens. But we're going to see who comes out ahead on that. But it's really interesting. And like I said, we were doing this years ago at a much smaller scale, just seeing if we could get it done. And it was, everyone was high-fiving and stuff when we were able to get it done. But now it's like, oh wow, now everyone wants to do this. And so hopefully that means good things for us. The other thing that we have been chatting about at work a lot is like, who's going to win all this, right? There's all these different streaming platforms out there. Netflix was obviously the leader for a long time. You look at the news right now, Netflix, they're not getting as many great new shows. They've kind of become a victim of their own success with some of the stuff that they've done, which is allowing some of the newer services to come in and take advantage and be like, well, they did it this way. Yeah. We can see it doesn't work out. So maybe we're going to do this. Everyone's complaining that Netflix wants to crack down on password sharing, which makes a lot of sense. But they're also saying, well, Netflix is going to have ads. Well, Netflix needs to make money, right? Like they want to be able to provide that content. You've got Prime, you've got Disney now. They've got more money than anyone rightly ever needs, and they're doing this. So I think that you're going to start seeing some of these services cannibalizing themselves in the next few years. And then like I kind of just touched on sports, but betting in the States right now is huge. We have a bunch of clients that we're working with on solutions for that. Daily, I mean, you watch any sports broadcast, there's half the ads are daily fantasy or sports casinos or whatnot. So a lot of fun trying to figure out how we can get that stuff into apps for people, right? Especially on TVs and whatnot. We know that people don't want to use second screens. That's one of the things that we've heard a lot about in terms of client research. So you've got these 65-inch, 75-inch TVs. You've got a lot of real estate on there. How can you get different bets and stuff into there? So there's some fun stuff too that's not just about the streaming, but around, again, those experiences. How can we improve those experiences for the user? That
I feel like it's just going to continue to evolve so much and change. It must be, I mean, for you, such an exciting space to be working in right now.
There's a joke that my coworker and I always say where it's like, the video streaming space is easy, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen Moneyball, but they're talking to him about playing first base. It's incredibly easy. Tell him. He goes, it's incredibly difficult. And that's kind of what our joke is around the office. There's so much that goes into it. And like I say, we're scratching the surface here, but there's just so much around it and so much behind it, right? And this is how people consume content now. So it's fun to be a part of that, right? I talked about being a part of something that people can see. Well, this is what people are seeing.
Yeah, and we said off the top that like REDspace kind of does a little bit of everything, and how can you be good at that? But like it sounds like you're doing a little bit of everything and kind of killing it at the game. Clearly,
it's a ton of fun. Yeah, it really is a lot of fun. And like I say, to hear about some of these things before they're going to come out, and to get the opportunity at REDspace anyway. When I started, it used to be they'd drop some designs on our desk, and you know the client would say, "Build this," right? Then it became how can we build this, right? We have this idea, how can we build it?
Right.
And now there's a lot of what should we build?
Right.
And so it lets us be a little bit
They're
creative.
coming to you for the ideas a bit more.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. Like I say that too much. Like I actually do enjoy my job.
That's awesome.
But you're like charting the future, honestly, when it comes to, because it is like, it's not new. Like you've been doing it for a long time, but things are changing. New platforms are popping up. The way that it can be experienced from a user perspective can change. Like it's not set in stone, and it will. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to be at the forefront of like, okay, what should we make here?
Yeah.
Like,
and despite it
exciting.
not being new, it kind of feels like the Wild West almost, of like,
yeah,
as much as there already is kind of established and behind us, like it kind of sounds like the future is unlimited. Like you could go any and every
REDspace
direction.
is building the future.
Whoever came up with that, I'll make sure that they
they
get
get
a
the
pat on
credit.
the back or something for that.
Artificial intelligence is a big topic of discussion right now in the tech world. So what impact, if any, do you think it will have on video streaming?
Yeah, it's there's been a lot of AI and machine learning stuff going on in this space for a while. Captions. Captions are a big thing, right? Accessibility is huge online right now, and so we've been working with different groups that automate these captions for years, and we keep seeing it's getting better and better every day. We're now to do human validation on the captions. It's taking way less time than it ever did before. This just keeps getting better and better, which is great. Ads, I've mentioned already, but I'll mention it again. There's a lot that goes into giving the user a positive ad experience. You don't want to be getting the same ads over and over and over again. You want the right ads going to the right users for the right clients, right? You don't need a horror movie showing up in your kids' content ads. Brand safety is a big thing. Like I say, duplicate ads is a big thing that they want to avoid. You don't want to see so many things. That might be more like algorithms than AI, but there's a ton of stuff behind that. Sorry. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more ways to kind of dynamically insert these ads into the content that's being watched, similar to how you see it on a sports broadcast where, you'll see a certain logo, put onto the field and whatnot. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more of that in like traditional streaming content, just because it's getting easier and easier for it to do. Content tagging is something that it's being used for, tagging that content accurately and consistently, without, having different people review certain types of content and tagging it a certain way. Recommendation engines obviously have been around a while, but like, I mean, my YouTube recommendations, my Netflix recommendations are a mess because of how my family, how my family does it. So there's a whole bunch of research going into that and how it can be made better. That looks like a whole, looks at a myriad of different things, not just what you're watching, but there's so much stuff in there. And then if the content is tagged properly, then it can only get better. And it's not even about it being proper. It's about it being consistent, right?
Right. And that kind of goes back to like the user expectations. Like,
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like as a consumer of media now, it's almost an expectation that I'm like, oh, what next should I watch? Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what to watch. You tell me what I should watch.
Yeah.
Like,
But then your kid goes on and watches 8 hours of
And then
Minecraft
messes it all up.
videos and then that's all that you get recommended. I mentioned that idea of per title encoding, right? And this whole idea of a metric that can be used to look and make sure that the quality is there. But, there's a whole bunch of AI and machine learning processes that are going, that will look at the content that's being encoded to maybe help define what that profile is before it even encodes it, right? Based on maybe it does a pass, does some tagging before it even does the encoding. So it knows the proper bit rates, the proper resolutions. If it's user generated content, right? You got to think about how many people are actually watching this. Do I need 8 renditions for this user that gets 10 views a month. But maybe there's a certain shows on YouTube now that are user generated, they get millions and millions of views. So yeah, we need to generate more of these. It can run it through different machine learning and AI type of things to see, okay, well, the quality metric is giving us this, but like, can the AI pick up on these differences in such a way that it can make these decisions smarter and encode things a little bit more, a little bit quicker without having to pay for the re-encode and all sorts of stuff in there. The whole idea of chapter indexing or skip intro, right? That you now get on a lot of your shows. A lot of that is being done with different AI, training it on the model of the theme song or a certain set of sounds. I actually had a coworker tell me that this was a big problem when they were trying to add it to The Simpsons, because during The Simpsons intro, Lisa plays her saxophone, and it's always a different little thing. So the model was always having trouble picking up where this was supposed to end, which I'm a big Simpsons fan. So that
I watched it obviously before, but I didn't even realize that. I knew Bart was always writing something different on the chalkboard, but I don't think I ever picked up that she was always playing a different song.
Yeah. So
anyways, sorry.
It's really neat. There's one of my coworkers has talked a lot about audio balancing, right? There's nothing worse, especially with streaming.
Yeah.
You're watching some show and then the ad comes on and it blows your ears off. So there's a lot of work being done in that to make sure that stream stays consistent for you. And then we did some really cool stuff a while ago, going back to this whole idea of delivering content at a lower cost. We did some stuff, and this is being done more and more now, where we're delivering content maybe at like 720p, and then using AI to upscale that content to 1080p on the user's device. So we're sending a much lower quality rendition, but the user is not, the user's getting a better quality rendition. Now, this depends on your hardware, right? You can't do this on some of these smart TVs and whatnot. There is a device that's currently out there that you basically run your TV through that, and it will do this for you, but it's $1,500 at this point, give or take.
Not for everyone.
So it's not for everyone, but as they start refining that, they'll make it more affordable.
Totally.
It will end up getting built into the TVs. And again, then you're going to see these lower quality renditions coming through, but they're going to look fantastic. So there's a whole bunch of investment into that. And like I say, we had someone at the office actually prototype this a few years ago, where they took a video, and then they delivered it at, I think they delivered it at like 480. And they upscaled it to be the same quality as the original. And I mean, it looked just as good. So there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in there. So
what can't AI do?
This might be off base, but like, can you do stuff like that with older videos? Like, when you watch something from the 90s and you're like, oh, this is filmed in the 90s. Like that. I know there's remastering and stuff like that, but
I couldn't do that for you, but yeah, like there's definitely a lot. That stuff can happen. Right. I mean, I don't know how much you've played with Midjourney, right? So far, but I'm fascinated by it. And I have a picture from my wedding day that for some reason, one of my favorite pictures is the only low quality photo we have. Like I can't get it. And so I've been trying to work with it to use AI to upscale that. So I'm sure that with video, it can do the same thing.
Very
right.
Cool.
There's so much cool stuff going on in there right now. And trying to find a way to use it is equal parts exciting and scary. So
That's so cool.
Okay, well, I mean, we covered a lot of ground here, but I guess, the floor is yours. Is there anything exciting that's coming up? And you talked a lot about, the future, but specifically at REDspace, anything super exciting you want to highlight?
At REDspace, definitely, I mentioned some of these smart TV OTT devices that that we're working with. We've become a community partner with the Comcast and Metrological Group for lightning development. And this is a new framework that's coming out. It's GL based. It's built to target a lot of these kind of OTT devices, smart TVs that aren't as powerful as some of the iPhones and the things that we're used to using. Right. And so we've been using that for a number of our clients. We've actually been submitting pull requests back to the Lightning Group, and they've brought some of our code into their framework that's being used. like I say, we're focused on streaming, but that's not all we do. We're, if you're interested in it, then we're always looking for talent, as are most of the tech companies. But if this sort of stuff interests you, then certainly check out REDspace.com. And as well as if you're looking to get your content out there, definitely check us out. We'd love to help.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today, Luke. It has been our pleasure. I find this fascinating, so thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to All Hands on Tech. Interested in learning more? Visit us on our website at www.digitalnovascotia.com. We'll see you next time.
This
has been
a Podstarter
production.